We will call the meeting to order here at 8:04 a.m. of the School Committee Finance Subcommittee. And we want to start with the fee discussion. Community schools, great. Pull that up.
So while you're pulling that up, I want to thank Martha for coming early into the group about her summer rate increase that we support and you all supported and voted. This is for the traditional school year community before and after school program. I want to thank Katie for meeting and supporting Martha around this presentation and this work and all the good feedback that Martha got at her presentation of just the state of the after school program at the school committee in January, which was a great news story. Continue to make good work. So thank you very much, Martha.
I'm just going to add to that too, just as to provide a little more context around that community schools program as it relates to the finances. So community schools operates as a self-sustaining program of the Milton Public Schools. So they have their own revolving fund. They're not funded through the school's operating budget. And so the revenue received into the revolving fund should completely offset all of the expenses tied to running the program. And so that's any of the material expenses, curriculum expenses, overhead, and the personnel expenses related to the program. Very recently, over the past several years, in an effort to increase the number of students that we could accommodate for the program, there was a very concerted effort to increase the number of staff. And in order to do so, there was also a fairly significant increase to the wages or the salary scale that we pay the community schools workers. And I think that that's all, to me, that was all tied together and happened at a very similar time. So we increased the pay so that we could increase hiring, so that we could increase the number of students that we were able to accommodate, because we currently operate with a wait list at some of our locations. And so as a result of that, although we over the period of several years had a significant surplus in the revolving account, that started to really reduce what that surplus is. And at this point in the current fiscal year, we're operating in a deficit just in the current year. We do still have surplus funds in that revolving account that we're depending on to cover that deficit position. But that is just something that we're very mindful of and that we need to address this year and in future years, so we can make sure that the program continues to remain self-sustaining. So that's just more context around recent history, kind of the program and some of the changes and how it's impacted the budget. And then that is just all really important considerations that Martha and I talk about when we're looking at the fee and the fee proposals for next year.
And just to clarify, the revolving account is funded by or spent down based on the profitability of the program, right? Okay. There's no other ins or outs. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Katie. Yes, and so we when we're looking at the tuition fees for the upcoming school year, when do you think more of a restructure rather than increasing? For the longest time, our tuition fees have been way under in compared to many similar programs. So actually, if you pull the first table that shows, I did this comparison as of December of 2025. And these are similar school based programs and a couple of nonprofit programs comparisons. So if you look at that green line, that's breaking it down by the hour and taking into account the duration of each program as well. So we've been at the last few years at $5 an hour for a while now. This year we're at $6.83. You can see the nonprofit programs at the most expensive is Belmont. It's a nonprofit before and after school actually after school program, you don't run before school, $12.06. So we that's for the after school program, and then the early school program, which is the second table, is even lower than the after school as well. Then there's other fees associated with the program. So we on early dismissal days, there's not regular after school program. We run a program from 12 to 5. That's typically a $25 a day per child. We also offer for ACE and ESAP programs a 30% discount for siblings that many other programs don't. This actually used to be, as of 3-4 years ago, 50% discount. And also we just started charging a registration fee as of last year, but most programs charge over $25-$30 per child for registration fees. In our school vacation camp program, which is the last chart, is also currently that the vacation school programs, because those are full day programs, they've been closer to other, in comparison to other schools and other districts. But it's a big disparity if you look at what early school, what we're charging currently an hour, and after school compared to the vacation camps.
The
Yes.
clarifying question on
Of
the
course.
data and the before and after school tables. Are the hourly rates based on actual hours that they are open, that each program is open, or are you just dividing by a comma?
No, they
So
are,
it's different based on.
they by the hours,
Got it,
yes,
okay.
yes.
Thanks.
And I have that information in a separate rule sheet,
Okay, no, it's fine. I was just
Yeah.
noticing variation and,
yes.
yeah, okay.
There's programs that start at 2:30.
Yeah.
So, and goes at 5, so I put that into account to break it down to hourly rates.
So there's this note in the top right that seems a little bit cut off, but I assume it's
Yes.
that essentially.
It's okay, all right.
So that's just a kind of like a broad comparison, and many of these programs are school-based, and we run very similar to what we do here in Milton. So in the next page,
Can I just?
oh,
make-
see, yes,
for the comparisons, that's the rate that they're charging this year.
yes,
And
yes.
so I think as we look at it and as we compare it, I think it's fair to make the assumption that those rates will increase next year.
Yes.
And so it's apples to apples if you look at our current and the other communities' currents. If you look at what we're proposing, which is in many instances still lower, we would be comparing next year's to this year's, so just.
And how, I'm not asking you to, I don't know, this question could be interpreted as weird, but like you have developed a very high quality program. You spent time in school, they talked about. How does the quality compare across these programs? Like, are most of these schools, districts also running programs of the same quality that you are, or is there more variation?
There is a variation, yes, yes.
So just to drive the point home, currently Milton charges let's just call it rounded up, in the bottom 20th percentile of rates, maybe lower, but we're probably in the top 20th percentile of quality.
Absolutely, yes. So just to kind of give you a little bit of history of what we've, our tuition fees, what they've been since 2008. And as you can see, they haven't really increased much since then. And this is just assuming after school for attending 5 days a week. we'll see at the top the increases that we proposed every year. And there were some years like in 2020, in 24-25, where we didn't increase any fees because of the surplus that we were carrying over. And then obviously the last column is what we are asking and proposing for the upcoming school year for these different programs. So that would be for after school, early school. We already talked about the summer programs. And thank you for supporting that proposal. And that is already in place. The summer camp and the extended day for the summer camp. And so I'm also asking for the vacation program to be fairly close to what we currently charge for the summer. It runs very similar, runs the same hours. It's full day program, similar quality, actually same quality, curriculum, staff, and whatnot. So it just makes sense for us to bring the vacation camp fees up to what the summer camp looks like. And also we want we're not even at $10 a year yet. So this is obviously we're going to continue evaluating and assessing throughout the year on where we are for the following year. So our goal is to get to at least $10 an hour by the 27-28 year. And hopefully with that, we can find a right balance so we can sustain our program in long term. And as you mentioned, the quality in what we currently offer. I also want to say we're currently not operating at we are operating at full capacity in terms of students. With staff, we're currently still always looking for staff. So we're not necessarily like fully staffed at this point.
Can I just comment? I'm
Yes.
glad that you have that statement at the bottom of that page to just show the families in the community and the school community that this is our goal that we're looking towards. This is, I think it's going to be the right sizing of the fee for the organization to be able to meet its needs moving forward. So just showing that now and getting people ready for it instead of not talking about it and then trying to land somewhere down the road with a bigger increase that we just let people know where we'd like to land and how we're incrementally trying to get there. I think it shows that we're being thoughtful and strategic and proactive with the communication. So thank you for that.
And no, obviously these were not numbers that we just kind of pull out of a hat. Katie and I did a lot of work on this projections. So showing a little bit of history from the past 3 years of what our revenues have been, what our payroll costs have been, and other costs. The overhead, which in 23-24, it was more than normally what we contribute to. So and that was also in a way it really affected the way that we were running the program and covering the cost and covering salaries. So that's also as a result of depleting that surplus. So this is our current projection with an overhead of $150,000. That will still bring us with a surplus of about $300,000 for the next school year. And then in the next year, we'll be talking about only like $100,000 as a surplus carrying forward, which is Katie and I talked about 3 months. Is that what you told me? 3 months. That's what we need to make the program sustainable and to be in a safe spot. That's not anywhere near the 3 months operational cost that we will need to be to have in our account carryover every year.
Katie and Martha, what is your comfort level with what you would like the surplus carryover forward to be? I know the 3-month nonprofit kind of thinking is there, three months worth of expenses, but is there anything, do we want to target something more than that? Is that sufficient? What is the comfort level from both Katie and Martha on that.
I actually have that here, in the spreadsheet. So, based on these projections, we were looking at a 650,000.
Okay.
Surplus.
That's the
Surplus.
target balance or the target surplus every year?
The surplus.
So, but on a year-to-year basis, what do we feel comfortable with? I think you were thinking about we don't want 600 and then another 600 to 122, but are we saying that we want to always carry or what's about a $600,000 balance in that account?
Mhm.
Not adding to it to make it 1.2 and then one.
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
Not adding
That
on.
was your question.
Yeah.
And so that's definitely a part of the process, trying to figure out what are the correct fees to charge that we could charge, that we would be at that break even point.
Mhm.
And then, or right now, seeing that we're not quite at that break even and we don't necessarily feel comfortable with what the surplus is. It's what do the fees have to be so that we're actually operating at a surplus so that we can make sure that that carry forward is at an appropriate level. And then we'd be able to look at what the increase is, the fee increase year over year, so that we're just operating at that break even point.
And not to simplify this, but that's exactly what our families deserve. They deserve a rate that's low enough that we can run the organization and have a carry forward balance to ensure that we can run it responsibly and be strategic, but not run it so much that we have a $2 million carry forward, right? So it's always that balance that we're looking for. So thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, and also I want to say that the previous surplus that we were carrying was a result of, again, not being fully staffed. Certainly 2 years ago, the increase in salaries really helped to recruit staff. But that was the result of what that surplus was.
How many years does it take to get to a $600,000 balance? You know,
It's gonna have to be a multi-year process, I would say, just because the increase this year or the increase that we're proposing next year is pretty significant. So it's gonna have to be a 3 to 5 year. I just don't think that it's thinking about like the families, and the families are the ones that are actually incurring this cost. Even thinking about the families, because the different pieces that we're proposing, families that may have more than one student. I just don't think it would be reasonable to try to do it 1 year.
yeah, totally. I was wondering, like, I assume we will consider fee increases in 27, 28.
Yes.
20, yeah, like I think we should just do a fee increase every single year. That's
Yes.
modest.
That matches.
Mhm.
That matches, yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Milton Community Schools is a nonprofit.
Yes, well, it is under Milton Public Schools.
Oh.
So, yeah,
Yes.
yes.
Okay. It doesn't, okay. I was wondering about just other potential revenue sources, like
Yes.
early childhood vouchers, or if you are eligible for those.
Yes, we actually were a part of the program and up until 2018, and then EC made a lot of changes. And that unfortunately we weren't able to meet. We're a license exempt program because we operate under Milton Public Schools.
Okay.
I've been looking at different ways to fund the program and writing grants and different things, but it's still nowhere near what we really need to support the program. The voucher program, there's really not that many families with vouchers currently. So we do offer currently tuition assistance that lines up with the EC voucher program. This exactly what they offer is what we currently offer. So any fees in which anything that we charge related to the program, such as late pickups, no-call fees, or families are late paying their bills, registration fees, all of that goes towards the tuition assistance. And we plan on continuing that because we know it is a significant increase what we're asking for that would affect some of the families. So we want to make sure that we continue supporting that tuition assistance and funding that. Mainly, we also work very closely with the Milton Residence Fund. So that we are able to contribute to a certain percentage, and then they support families with additional. What?
The other wrinkle I would throw in this, just to be aware of, conversations we've had. We in this budget cycle for FY 27 have pulled out our food service folks and then are having them fund their own insurance.
Mhm.
And it was the community schools were part of that discussion. We said that we could not do that at this time because the revenue was not matching the expenses and we need to have the program get on their feet. So as we look down the road of maybe adding a little bit to our tuition each year to make sure we have that balance, we may also need to consider at some point in time when the town comes back and says there might be 7 people, maybe 8 max that are on insurance. It's not that many. But if they do ask for that cost to be absorbed by the community schools, we'd have to price that out in the future years to find out how we can accomplish that. So just to say that out loud in future years.
Yeah.
And another thing to mention is that we started working on this very early, or actually last summer. So we were looking already at this current year where we could reduce cost. So in the past, one example is that we used to bring seasonal staff, so students in college will come back on their breaks and then we'll hire them back for after school during their breaks. We can do that this year. Our high school students, well, normally we have high numbers. Right now, we're not planning on hire additional, what we call CITs, counselors and trainings, because they're not currently in ratio. So we're really focusing on group leaders, which are adults over 18 with experience. So there's different things that we have been doing. And we work with third-party vendors. Up to last year, we had about 10 different vendors, and we cut down. We now have 3, and we're passing on that cost to families. Before we were able to subsidize the cost and basically charge like $5 a class to families, but now, we decided that that's not longer sustainable, so we passed on that cost to the families directly, but we're still able to offer some those extracurricular classes. And then for the summer program as well, we're trying to reduce costs whatever is possible. So this is basically in summary what our recommendations are to bring the after school program, the ACE program at $8.87 per hour for the upcoming school year. The early school program, bring it to $6.83 an hour. The early dismissal from $25 to $32.50 per child. And again, this covers from school dismissal until 5 o'clock on half days, which I believe there's only 2 now in the upcoming school year. Is that right?
Their conference days too.
Okay. We're asking to change the sibling discount from 30 to 20%. Our registration fee currently is per family. We're asking that is per child per year. So then these fees go again towards the tuition assistance funding. That our vacation camp rates align with the summer recently approved rates at $11.73 an hour. This is a conversation for another time, but we've been operating at a loss for our December vacation programs. So we are considering suspending the program as of next year and still continue our February and April vacation camps. In what I mentioned earlier about tuition assistance, continue income-based tuition assistance for families qualifying for free and reduced lunch and the allocation of those associated program fees towards the funding of the tuition assistance.
Thank you for that summary. Could I just add to the December pausing? It should be really noted that the enrollment is down. Not many people are taking advantage of it because of the way that the holiday may fall, or people go away, people are with family. But that's the only week that the staff gets off all year. So they work the whole school year. They work the vacations. They do a summer program. So it's really challenging. I really want to support your staff in saying that if we have low enrollment it would be a very big support to the staff to be able to have that be possible. So it's just their only time to be able to get us a couple of days off, which is usually only 3 days.
It normally is 3 days, and even though we the way we charge for the vacation kids is a set rate for the 3 or 4 days. Many families don't bring their children the 3 days, so we end up with like 10 kids or 15 kids and way more staff than what we need, and so that's why it's really difficult to maintain the December vacation program afloat. And also just want to point out that I've been doing some research, and I asked all the programs if they run a December camp, and none of them do.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I guess first overall, I knew we were not in a great place in terms of our fees. This is much more concerning than I think I had realized in terms of just because these are obviously very large, even 10% summer based on they start warping that. And you're still projecting that we're going to be at a deficit next year, even with that.
And we're only charging an overhead of 150.
Yeah, you dropped that by $100,000. So that's obviously we know what happened in 23, 24, so that's an outlier. But yeah, that's a concern. So it seems like in order to do this, in order to get them up to $10 next year or the following year, we'd be saying the 27-28 school year, that'd be another 13% increase. We did a 17% increase this year. We'd be doing a 30 to 50% increase next year. I'll talk just about after school because that's the biggest piece, but a 30% increase next year, and then another 13% increase. So I see why you're doing it because again, this number is getting set very tight compared to where it was. But that's hard. That's going to be a lot for families.
Could I ask it to show another? Can we show the screen where it shows what the actual families pay? So
this one
is that what it shows just for the after school program?
Yeah.
So it's $3,686 for the whole year of after school care.
Yeah.
180 days of school.
Okay.
And so that family is only paying $6.83 an hour.
Yeah.
So I think so when we talk percentages versus the raw number of that's where I feel more comfortable saying that the dollar value, the dollar increase from 683 to 887 feels a lot more comfortable to me. When we frame it in percentages, I think that sounds like, oh my gosh, and it is. But I think we're still in a reasonable space for sure.
Yeah, I think you were showing the comparison to other districts we're in the reasonable space. You're showing that from the revenue we can't afford to operate the way we are. So I get that. I'm not trying to argue against the increase. I just putting in perspective that is an extra grand per kid essentially that families are going to be spending on this. And they again that's on top of a pretty good increase that we did this year in order to try and start this process. Again, I appreciate how y'all are not trying to solve the problem all in 1 year. This is a 3-year plus smoothing process of bringing our rates more in line with what they need to be to operate our program. And I don't have a better solution. So I guess I'm just opining on the real concern that I think some families will have. Again, with an extra $600, 2% increase in that impact on early school stuff is a lot. Just a question on your projections for the expense stuff. It seems like this is assuming a 6% increase in payroll and other costs. Is
Yes.
there reason for the 6% number?
Yeah, so normally our salaries align with the unit let's get confused, unit D, the paraprofessionals table rate and the non-HRS table rate. So we looked at what the increase every year, the potential increase every year, plus the step in between, that's around the 6%. So it's a sort of like a round number.
Mhm.
And that is also assuming that we have the same number of kids enrolled in the program, the same number of staff. Again, and not even with fully staffed. But these are just like very general projections.
So you could say, I assume, are you doing a similar, like you're taking all your current staff, assuming they're coming back, rolling them up?
Correct.
So we could anticipate with some churn, as you said you'll had, that maybe this number is a conservative number in terms on the higher side. Obviously, again, even with that, even if there's some savings here, we're still projecting a deficit. So like it's, but there's an ability where maybe that is a bit better.
So yes, and it is really unfortunate what happened in 23-24 with this community schools surplus, because we were counting on that to continue getting up to what we're asking today, but instead of doing it
For 5 years.
so like, yes, we wanted to do it at a longer term, but again, obviously that really really affected us. And again, 23-24.
Just a random thought, we don't have to get into it today, and it's not for the short term. But if it's allowed, it could be worth considering establishing like a separate friends group for Milton Community Schools, like a nonprofit fundraising arm that would allow you to raise extra
Yes.
budgetary funds through whatever. And I like that you're focused on the sustainable path of like living off what you bring in. But that can help just, I don't know if other programs do it, but that can help just smooth out bumps. It won't bring in a lot of money, but it can sometimes be a nice buffer.
Absolutely, yes.
I guess my only other question would be as we think about reaching that $10 like threshold for after school, and what was the threshold for early school?
Is 10 as well.
10. So the goal would be to bring them both up to
Yeah,
10.
and that's why we're asking for a bigger increase for early school this year compared to after school. It's a 50% basically.
Gotcha. Is there a reason why you want to align those things? Is the cost of early school not? Because there's not as many, obviously, programmatic offerings in early school, like the chess and the things you talked about with the after school. I would assume the cost of you running early school is just different than after school. But
It is, but it's also the enrollment is way lower than what after school is. It really, our numbers went down. I've mentioned this before with breakfast program being free now. And the number of enrolled students is much lower, particularly at College in Cunningham. And also in order for us to staff the program in the morning, we have to really make it work. It's basically 1 hour.
Yeah.
And so we try to employ paraprofessionals so they can arrive at 7 or before 7 o'clock and help out in the program, and we match their paraprofessional rates. So that's the reasoning behind that.
Gotcha. That's helpful. If we are to, so again, right, I just did the calculation on after school. I'm not sure what pushing this up to $10 in FY28 would look like early school, but that's a 13% increase. John, any discussion of smoothing this out a little, like evening those 2% increases a bit more to say, hey, instead of going up to 887, I don't know what the median, but it's 840, and then you go up So you do like $1.60 jump and then another $1.60 jump or something like that, like it just, how'd you land on the 887 for next year?
Yeah, so for the, it's the 30% for the 887 for the upcoming year. And for the following year to get to 1060 an hour is another 18% increase for the after school. And for before school is much, much bigger. So it's 50 now and 47% following year.
So when we looked at the numbers, when we were trying to calculate what we were going to propose for next year, we really were looking at what the fee would be for us to be able to break even, knowing that, because I think for me, this is really the important piece of looking at it, looking at the program overall and what do we need to charge in order to be sustainable. And so when we first plugged in the numbers that we're presenting to you today, that was the initial kind of break-even piece. But then we had to factor in the overhead, and that's why we're operating at a deficit position. And so I think because of that, and because I do worry about this is a projection, and it's a projection that at the end of the year we could be at $100,000. If we have any swings in the expenses, because the what we pay our employees are somewhat tied to what other employees are paid, we could be at a deficit, and that's just it's not an option for us, because then that overhead piece, like that overhead is us taking expenses from the school operating budget and assigning it to community schools. And so we would have to do the reverse. And I just don't know that could be an option for us.
Yeah.
So this is the quasi perfect storm of, we don't have the money to have the offset be any less than that, because we've actually had the offset be more than that. So we're taking a Milton Public School hit for only going after a 150 offset overhead in order to try to make this work. And we're also worried that we're even going to make it work with that reduction. So this is also an FY27, FY28 conversation for Katie and I, in separate from the schools, because we're not going to be able to lean into that and create flexibility in our budget there. So I would say the higher the better, quite frankly. And I say that with respect to the families. I say that because our rates are so below market. And if we were the middle or the higher end of that, I would be more cautious in saying something like that, given that, next year, even with that 30% increase at 887, that's the third highest of all of those folks. We have an 847 and 886.
799. Yeah. So
we're the third lowest on that. And like everything in life, we need to meet the budgetary requirements. That they will not exist without that.
We talked to Martha and I do talk about outside of the program, what other options do our families have, right? And I think that is why it's not the reason why we have demand for our programs, because our programs are amazing. But we also have demand for the programs because it's not like we have unlimited options of other programs that are operating in Milton that families can access. And so we do talk about, what does the family truly need? Do they just need an hour after school because it's hard to get to the bus stop or get to pick up, or do they truly need the 3 hours? And just thinking about what are some of the alternatives that we can offer our families as Milton Public Schools, knowing that this could be significant and could be potentially cost prohibitive for a family to want to sign up. And so knowing that we do have the CAS program and some of the after school programs at the schools that could be an option for the families if they don't want to have to commit to a 3-hour time period and after school, just like kind of trying to think of some of those, what are the other options? What can we do as a district to say, like, we realize that this fee increase is significant. Look at some of these other options that we have. Maybe that works better for your family.
And those options allow maybe some of those folks to go from a 1 or 2 day a week person to going straight to the after school sponsored programs that are not community schools that would, we hear feedback all the time to free up space for the people who need 5 days a week.
Yeah.
To make their family and their work life work. Because we do have folks that do it in a way that's helpful to them, but not necessary. And then we have folks that call and say, I just need 5 days a week. We both work. We both get out of our house every day and we go somewhere. We heard that a lot about the bus this year, and we heard that about the after school program. So there might be some other pieces of this that flow in that might be helpful to folks. But there's no YMCA, there's no other programming in the town that supports other alternatives for folks, which concerns parents greatly. And we try to think through that as well as Katie.
So, when I was doing research on other districts, 90% of the programs have waivers.
They all have waivers, yeah.
They all have waivers.
Thank you for your presentation on.
Yeah, this is great, Michael. Thank you.
Yeah, very helpful. Sorry.
Do we need to take a vote to recommend it to the subcommittee?
Possibly. Yeah. Question is, when are we expecting to take a vote on the 11th?
We
School
have Martha on the agenda for March 11th.
So we could take a vote the morning of the 11th.
No.
Scheduled for the morning of the 11th. So
We might not, you might, we were gonna talk about whether we
yeah.
can reschedule it or not.
Yeah.
And if you can't, it's no problem.
yeah. That's right. So I've minutes to be able
I
to
think she said she has the one.
shoot that's let me see. I missed the conversation anyway, so there we go. Yeah, you comfortable taking a vote today?
Yeah. If we want to wait, we can do that too.
I'm comfortable taking a vote. Hi, Amanda.
I'm so sorry. I've never done that, so I apologize.
It's no problem. We just finished going over the presentation on the fee schedule.
Mhm.
So, and then we were wondering if we should vote today or wait till next week. John has some scheduling conflicts with next Wednesday morning potentially. Without him and still vote on it, but ideally we take a vote as a finance committee before it goes back to a full school committee next Wednesday night.
Mhm.
Say whether or not we recommend this for the school committee or not.
Right. Do you have a preference on what we vote?
I don't, I mean, again, I don't know if you'd like to kind of watch whatever you missed and so therefore ask all questions. So I would certainly want to defer to give you the opportunity to be involved in the conversation prior to a vote.
Yes, I would love that if I could, and I'm so sorry that I just probably messed that up. But if we could meet to vote as the subcommittee on Wednesday morning, if that still worked, or does
Yeah, we'll talk about, I think, on another further down the agenda, talk about the meeting next week, just to see if we can move it to accommodate John or if we need to meet without him. But yeah, we'll vote for right now.
Okay.
We'll definitely take one next week, regardless of boards. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here so well.
So. Other agenda items kind of under old business is the budget process, just to give you all an update on the timeline. We talked about it a bit in terms of coordination over email, but we have the confirmation of warrant committee meeting presentation to the full warrant committee, not just subcommittee, on the night of the 17th of March, 7 p.m. Asked us to come in. We had a meeting last week with warrant committee.
Mhm.
It was so had a meeting last week with their subcommittee to kind of go over current budget stuff in a really two kind of follow-up questions and one kind of document request. But otherwise seemed to be informed, and that conversation kind of went well. And so next step is to come in front of them. We then also talked about trying to have the full school committee vote on the budget prior to that 17th. So I think we've scheduled that for the 16th. Obviously have our 11th public budget forum at the school committee, and that night too we'll vote on fees. So those may seem to be some of the pieces that are falling into place leading up to kind of the final budget approval and then presentation of warrant committee to get on the town warrant. And then you were working with the PTO to see, we're obviously in a tight time crunch, but as we talked about the last meeting, if possible, we'll see if we can have some type of conversation presentation with families through PTOs. But yeah, we are obviously not sure.
Meeting with them on all the PTO presidents will be meeting with me on Monday afternoon.
Okay. Any other pieces?
When was that? John, when did you say you're meeting with them?
Monday afternoon, I think it's at noon here in the college.
Great.
Any other kind of timeline pieces we should talk through? Not, then maybe I'll jump back to the other document you uploaded in the folder today, Katie, which was the budget detail document. Is there anything to, this is the document I think the warrant may had asked for, so we talked about obviously wanting to be able to share that too with school committee members. Is there any kind of overview or framing you want to talk through with that document?
Sure, I can just quickly, so the line level detail just shows every single budget line that's held within Milton Public Schools operating budget. The document has information on fiscal year 25 actual expenditures. You can see the original fiscal year 26 budget proposal, some information on the FTE, just the full-time equivalency for our staff, then the FY26 adjusted budget. So as you all know, through the summer, we go through the budget recast process of just kind of looking at previous year's actual expenditures and making adjustments as needed, and that information is presented to you all in the quarterly report. So adjusted budget is also reflected in the document. There's also information about revenue offsets. So the revenue offsets again are any of the fees that we may charge that we use to offset the overall expenditure from the operating budget. Some of the grants that we receive, either state or federal grants. We have special education grants and some teaching and learning grants, and the circuit breaker funding as well. So that information is in the revenue offset column. And then you can see then net budget information in the net budget. That total number is what we request for funding from the town. And so that information is provided to you from both fiscal year 26 as well as fiscal year 27. And then there are just some notes that are just, you know, if there's questions, the notes are always in an effort to kind of answer some of the questions that may come up for the individual budget lines. So that's kind of more information around like the formatting and the content of the document. I think I also attached a summary of the revenue offsets in a separate document that should be attached so you can see what the utilization was for 26 and what the proposed utilization is for 27. This document was created based off of the budget that we had proposed on, I believe it was February 10th, and that was previous to increasing the circuit breaker utilization. So that's one piece that I wanted to note, that we have had follow-up conversations on increasing that FY27 number for the special education circuit breaker reimbursement from the 2.6 to the $3 million. And so the impact in that first document, the line level document, I don't believe the impact won't be to the total number. We're still targeting that 3.7% increase. The impact is just going to be how we readjust that within the line items that are contained within it. And so I think we've made some other proposals in adding back the BCPA positions and reinstating the Director of Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging to full time again. And so some of those changes are still not reflected in this document because this document is based off of that February 10th kind of proposal.
Will you be updating this document? in the near
Yes.
future?
Yep, so I can update that and resend it, reshare it if that's helpful. But again, just keep in mind that it's not gonna, it won't change another bottom line number. We are still at that 3.7% increase. It's just kind of, again, the allocation. So I can. Sure.
Yeah, I think if you could, just to avoid
Yes,
confusion,
Yes.
given especially the warrant committee for passing this on, this is a place that they've talked a lot about,
yeah. we can-
and some other things.
How is the table sorted?
It is, that's a great question. I believe it's sorted by the account number, but I would have to double check.
Would it be possible to sort it in some other way? Like either by like account type or by, I don't know what the, the net budget number or something like that, just because right now it feels it's like random, but it's sorted by some arbitrary number, right?
Mhm.
So as you scroll through the lines, in one line, you're looking at medical equipment, and the next line you're looking at foster care transportation. So maybe there's no good way to do that, but it's just kind of hard to read through it that way.
Sure. So how would you like me to?
Are these the columns available for sorting?
We can, yes, so we could sort by, so I believe it's sorted by
Number.
the account
Yeah.
number. And there's the account string, there's multiple segments to it. So there's probably like 6 or 7 segments. I believe that this is sorted by the function area or functional area. But we can sort it by like the DESI object code, which would be salaries and then general expenses. And that's kind of how the quarterly report is more organized. So the quarterly report is all of this information taken at a level, right? Because this is dense and this is a lot. And I think that's where, this was shared pretty widely last year, but it's a lot. So.
That's why I wonder if so there's different depths that people go into the budget. That this is the depth of a warrant committee line by line thing that we always want to make sure we're presenting in a way to be very, very clear what we're doing. But the cost center that you do at the end of every quarter for the person who's in the middle might not be wanting to go all the way down. That's organized in a way I think that walks itself through in a way that might make it easier for folks to follow. But that just, it's not my work to organize, so I don't know how that works. But in my brain, I always go right to the cost center one.
Yeah.
Because all that information feeds up to that. So that's the executive sum.
Right.
Are those things, when you said cost center, is that what you're talking about right there?
Those are the object codes, so those are like the salaries or the first 3. And those are kind of lumped together, and then the general expenses are the last 3. And that's how the information, again, like with the quarterly reports, we report by the major cost centers, and then under each cost center, it's broken out by object code.
I mean, what would be, I don't know, I don't know what the warrant committee, so if this is ultimately deliverable for that, maybe we should ask them. But like, how I think about it would be like, I think about it almost by location.
Yeah, that's the cost center.
Okay, so cost center,
Total time.
and then maybe object code within a cost center. I think we could group by cost center and then sort by object code.
So it's the same format as the quarterly report,
Okay,
which is how the original budget back in November was presented. That like original level service budget was presented in that format. So, I can put a sample of that into the folder, and if that looks like something, then that kind of like makes more sense.
I tend to agree that makes sense to me. I don't know if that makes sense, will make sense to every warrant committee member.
Yeah.
I guess a question for you, just something I hope would be easier is, can we just provide it as an Excel with these columns? All this data you have here, obviously, and then those two extra columns, and then they want to sort it by cost center, they can sort it by cost center, they want to sort it by object code, they can sort it by object code, but it just kind of takes off the need for you to have any kind of further work of sorting it based on individualized centers, but yeah.
So I think the whole, and I maybe Nathan, this is what you're aiming at as well. I think we have a couple of different, objectives that we're trying to do at the same time.
Yeah.
We want to make it as clear as possible.
Mhm.
We want to give people the ability to see things in this executive summary way. And if they want to dig into the detail, that they can connect the dot to the detail. So I agree with that. 'Cause we want to let them have a document they can read on their own, in their own pace, in their own way, to come up with the same conclusion that we are, which is all this makes sense and this is the percentage, et cetera. When we start to give folks the ability to get into the spreadsheet, then they're starting to look at it through different lenses. And if that's helpful for them, I want it to be helpful. I just hope that it doesn't generate more questions. I don't know what your experience has been with that. So I'm open to any of that, whatever works. And I appreciate, Mark, you putting up that up there as an option. So Katie doesn't have to have a different flavor for everybody on the warrant committee of trying to, how do we provide this? You know what I mean, how does it make sense? How do we move it forward? And if we let the spreadsheet go out for folks to be able to organize in a way that makes sense for them, that might just be the easiest way to do it. But I would defer to Katie for that.
Yeah, my thought is just like, again, with that, one of the ways people might want to look at this is look at percent difference. What are the places where the percent difference, right, is increasing? So being able to filter to see that clearly versus Katie making one word
Yeah.
by that, or
Yeah.
again, and like, what's the biggest change between kind of, maybe in a dollar amount or something like all those things are different ways in which you can kind of cut stuff up, that the data is all here in a PDF. It's just a much more manual process that we would be requiring folks to kind of go through to do that work. So again, I don't think there's additional information. I just think
Right.
the tool of the Excel makes it so that hopefully they can answer some of the questions themselves versus I can't figure out the structure of this. I
And then
can't
we get
read it. I don't know where,
questions. Yeah.
what is going on here. I do think that, again, this overall summary is very helpful. I think this is very helpful.
I like the idea of the spreadsheet. I think it will answer that range of questions.
Do you think it will create many questions? And also, Katie, when we think about this, when we were able to move into FY26, or we had a projected budget that was then supported by an incredible override by the community. And then when we had some vacancies, you have the resets of the adjustments in Q1 and Q2. And then there was some, were there any changes in any lines that were just kind of restructuring how the money's represented that might be confusing to folks? Like such and such is in this category now because it was easier. I think you had a couple of those as we went from Q1 to Q2. And I'm just not sure how we want to codify that for folks to understand, because I could see someone saying, why is there a 36% increase in this budget line? Well, that Unit B member was always, we spread that Unit B member across the 4 elementary schools or something like that. There might be a couple of those that people, when they do sort, to your point, Nathan and Mark, by what's the biggest difference, and they might see a line. We just want to be able to come up with what that answer was and why it's it's not a financial change, it's more of a how it's represented
Yeah, sure.
change.
How it's reported.
Yeah, and that might be what your notes are for, and that might be carried as notes.
Yeah,
Mark,
and
do you have
again,
a sense of how Jay is thinking of structuring the meeting next week? And maybe might be good to have a chat with them.
yeah. I'm assuming it will be similar to kind of what we've done years past, but it's a fair question. I'll double check with them, because I was just in terms of what he had previously shared of what he was envisioning of the subcommittee, of the school, of the warrant committee, school's small working group, kind of being the ones to come and present. His request was for us to come and present, which is not quite what I think I've seen from some other departments at this point. But I think fair question. It's my rambling statement, so I can follow up with him this week. Just try and get clarity on what he is hoping we are going to be doing versus what this subcommittee members are going to be doing in that presentation.
Yeah.
My initial thought is like something similar to what Jonathan presented at school commission with additional information that's maybe more monetarily focused that we think the board committee is there. March, but also add on the list, which brings us a bit to the next budget agenda item. Just I think for next week we should start looking through some draft slides and we should kind of start compiling that like a draft presentation for one committee together over the next week. In order for this group to be able to talk next week about those slides, get some feedback before we are on the same part of them in about 10 days at this point. And knowing what the warrant committee wants would be very helpful with that presentation. So point taken, I can
To be a little bit proactive, if this is more work than or not helpful, but we already sent this document over to the warrant committee now that we've seen it together? Do we want to send it to them in order to have them? Would it be helpful for us to give them any information in advance? So if there's any questions about what they're looking at over the weekend, this weekend, and give them like a hard stop on like Tuesday, then if you have any questions, give them all to Jay, and then Jay gives them to all of us, so we have time to maybe respond to something before that
presentation.
Yeah. That might be a helpful tool, but the communication line would have to be really clear because Katie continues to get emails from different folks individually. So it'd be nice if we give them the spreadsheet or we give them whatever we give them generically.
Yeah.
At a certain point in time, maybe by Friday. It could just be the Excel spreadsheet, however Katie wants to do it. And then say, if you have any questions, please do so by Tuesday and give them all to Jay. Jay will forward it to this group, and then we'll try to proactively answer any of those. So we're walking in prepared for, and that means the presentation could be the presentation, but we could have an FAQ at the end that just kind of answers anything that they need. Would that be helpful to you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to saddle this with questions that we could have answered beforehand if we know what they were. And on behalf of them, they need to read the material first.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. What is next end of day next Tuesday, kind of the helpful cutoff?
So my first question is, do we want to give the spreadsheet in its entirety without any context and just say, here's the budget? If you have any questions, we'll be doing, in an ideal world, we're going to do a presentation for you. It will have slides that encompass what's been already presented, along with some detail related to the detailed budget. We're also giving you the Excel spreadsheet to sort as you may want to in a way that it's helpful. And as we build our presentation, we really want to know what questions you have so we can build that into our presentation for you. 17. So if you have any questions or thoughts that you want us to consider or add to, give us, by Tuesday, Tuesday to give us 3 days to get it done. It feels like we're doing this in 6 or 8 days. This again, it feels like we're rushed. It feels like we're compacted in time, and there should be more of this happening over a longer period of time. So we're not pushing forward as quickly as we are.
Yeah,
be my recommendation.
Yeah,
I remember when that was the plan.
What's the plan?
Yeah, and so now here we are, changing, pivoting incredibly since January 7th, still meeting the deadline, because this budget that Katie's had in place has been in place for a good amount of time.
Mhm.
And it still has to be reconciled with whatever has been taking place over the last 2 weeks. Are we gonna have, that's why the lines don't match at this moment, because we're waiting to solidify that. So all the back of the house work can be done to match the number. So if we're staying with whatever we're staying with on the 11th, we'll hear from the public on the 11th. If there's any shifts, we'll have to address that, but the warrant committee should know that whatever we give them will be as close to exact as possible, given the fact that there'll be feedback from the public, which we want to make sure we give them time to do that, and there might be some disconnected pieces to that at the time. But to Katie's point, the number is the number. We're only going up by X%. The money's the money. None of that is changing. This is just the moving parts. And I think the public having feedback to that would be helpful one more time. But for the warrant committee, and for the select board, they asked us to meet a number, we met it.
Yeah, we should be.
How we,
Hopefully have
how we
no
get,
issues.
how we get there is really a function of the school committee, governing and overseeing the school department and what that looks like, along with the public feedback, et cetera. So we are, what I mean? So that to me, it's, that this is, we need to hear from the public. That's the most important next step. And if there are any shifts from that, then we want to make sure that we did that in listening to what they have to say, take concern about. But then after that, when the school committee makes a decision, we're at 3.76. That the number doesn't change.
I view this, I've never been a warrant committee member, but I view our role at a warrant committee too as being, assuming the warrant committee is going to recommend this budget to town meeting, making sure that they can, fully make that recommendation with whatever analysis they do.
Yeah.
And can just make that with confidence. So I don't know if, sometimes they just have questions out of curiosity to help them individually understand it. But I think whatever they need, whatever information they need in order to feel confident in their recommendation, answer questions at town meeting feels important, but will obviously be called to answer those questions too.
Agreed.
I mean, maybe Mark, up to you, but like maybe before we ask Katie to share a spreadsheet with the warrant committee, talk to Jake first.
Yeah, I mean,
Let's.
I think sharing the budget detail, I'd be in favor of sharing that, even just the PDF for now, as soon as possible, just because they've been asking for it. And to your point, I want to give them time so they can look at it, they can ask their questions, so we're not kind of dealing with this last minute, and be respectful to just them as professionals, so they need some time to review a very dense, long document under its lines. So I'd be in favor of doing that, and then following up with Jay. I think so this makes me again just think it'd be helpful if the subcommittee of the schools almost have a presentation to the rest of their warrant committee colleagues before we even came in to help educate them, because I think that was the purpose of those groups, is they should be kind of really leading that work, and then we're coming in and tying the bow around this within a slightly different context based on those questions. And to your point, given our budget is aligned with what the town administrator is saying, it's providing us, as for any other department, assume the warrant committee will have concerns with where we're at. It's a much different situation than the override last year.
Last year drafts, so maybe an override, no override. This is pretty clean.
Yeah. But I like your point of, we can try to set a deadline for them of Tuesday. So I can do that. I can share this PDF with them. I know they had just a couple other questions that they've sent a couple weeks ago. Jay sent over a couple weeks ago that y'all are still working on, or maybe you replied to, and I just haven't seen the email yet.
I don't see that. I didn't see the questions. I saw his kind of presentation, but I don't really foresee questions.
He had the Rouge was the questions on the FTEs, which this potentially answers. And then we had the question on the revolving counts, kind of like funds, which I think you had a different documents we already had of just what those balances were in 24, 25, 26.
I sent over yesterday the history for the revolving funds, for all of the revolving funds back to fiscal year 16.
Oh.
I think the question was more about 26, 27, 28, but for the revolving funds, we usually don't project forward. It's usually we're just using the history, so I was
Yeah.
hoping potentially having the, 10 years of history would be helpful.
Yeah,
So
okay,
except that,
great, okay.
we
and
can
that-
share
that's fine.
that.
And then there were the two questions that we got last Thursday, which we met and you answered the one on the middle school elective
Yeah.
staff member that I just need to write up, the
And
class
you need
size.
the English class size.
Yeah, that was the only. So that's what I'm fingering,
Okay.
or committee requests.
Yeah.
So I think with that, and me emailing them, we should be caught up
Okay.
and a date. There, yes, stacking over, see what else happens.
Okay.
I think points are really good when I'll follow with Jay on just how that structure should go. So we don't waste time. And then once I have that, I can move back to y'all on get that drastically change what we think the draft presentation should. What I originally was thinking.
Okay.
Amanda, just want to make sure, does that all sound right to you?
It does. I think my one question, and maybe this is sort of adding just a layer to it, is maybe reaching out to the subcommittee and asking sort of what you would raise the question of, are they going to do a presentation to the warrant committee? So maybe reaching out to them first, like reaching out to Julia or somebody and asking sort of what their process is going to be, because then that might inform to your other question, like, does it wind up being a PDF or do they need the full Excel spreadsheet? What, I guess sort of, because I think that's where I'm just trying to understand what would be the most useful, and do they need the whole Excel sheet to manipulate, like just sort of reorganize, or is that PDF enough based on what the subcommittee is going to do? So I think it's just really having a sense of what the process is going to be for them for presenting their recommendation or their thoughts around the school budget. So maybe Julia or one of the speakers can answer that, but otherwise I think it sounds good. And definitely
point.
getting a deadline in would be helpful.
Okay, I can reach out to Julie too, that's good.
So as we spoke at the last budget commission meeting on Monday, and just to reinforce, in these meetings, from a timing and budget calendar perspective, the dialogue that we're having in August and September of next year, let me start over. The dialogue that we had in late December, early January of this fiscal, getting ready for the work that we're doing right now, should be happening in August and September. Any adjustments that should be made to the budget because of the revenue forecast, the expense forecast not meeting the needs of any department should happen in October, November. The budget is then drafted, whether that's a draft one, but the full budget, which Katie had, will be done prior to and commented on by the public and brought to PTOs in December, maybe a little bit into July, into January. The full line budget should be given to the warrant committee in mid-June. And there should be meetings that happen in early February where we're doing this right now.
Yep.
So that's the calendar. And I say that because I really think it's important for the town to, and we've had this conversation, so this isn't a new conversation. It's not a judgment. It's, we have to get on a budget calendar that allows the warrant committee to have sufficient time to review the data they need to review, because we want them to make a strong recommendation. We have to meet early with assumptions on what our expenses are for schools, police, fire, et cetera, and what the revenue our expenses are in big assumption, with a lot of assumptions, but big chunks, so we can actually see, are there any big pieces, is there any big deficits that we need to worry about? And there should be an ongoing calendar conversation, so we're not rushing and compacting these conversations. It feels like we're not meeting with our PTOs. It feels like the warrant committee is going to feel rushed, and they are being rushed. It feels like we're being rushed because we are. And so I really hope that we can get into a systematic calendar approach to this work. So then all parties involved, including the public, can have real clear insight into what's being discussed, why, how come, what the impacts are to the negative and to the positive, and how we can make this budget process be tied up in the month of January. Before February break, all this should be done, and the warrant committee shouldn't have to run around this to get them put together. So that would be my suggestion, and we're working towards that in that budget commission committee.
I'm with you. That's late plans for our calendar. Loan up.
Next year will be different. We will do that next year. We will do that next year.
I think, can I add something? I think having some, and I know I've said this before, and maybe there's more clarity than I think that there is. But I think having clarity around the role and maybe how that calendar, how the budget coordination committee impacts the calendar, I think that's where I'm a little bit confused on how that might have impacted things as well. Or are there assumptions maybe that conversations are happening there that, like, I just don't know if moving forward, if sort of the role of that committee is maybe solidified a little bit more and there's some clarity around it, and then understanding maybe how that influences or impacts the calendar as well, because you have all of those different, you have this, you have representatives of the select board, the warrant committee, the planning committee, everybody's there. And so I don't know if that is going to influence that timing either. I don't, I know this is the first year that committee existed. But I think just I'm just wondering how that might support or influence that timeline as well. If there's some clarity around what the role is and where they have impact or feedback on that or discussions around it. So because I do feel like that added a layer a little bit, that felt like conversations were happening there, that maybe because it's new, there wasn't the understanding of how that information would funnel back. So I don't know, just food for thought as we move forward on how to have clarity around that piece.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that the newness of that committee added a gray area. People thought we were all communicating, but we weren't sure what the functions were actually taking place. I think that that committee should act in parallel and in service to the process, but the calendar should be the calendar. That what we've learned this year is that we need a calendar that we stick to, and we have important conversations on certain months of the year to prepare for the next fiscal year. And I think that they can coexist and inform each other, but I don't think that we need to stop what we're doing, and Nick shouldn't stop what he's doing, and the police chief shouldn't stop what he's doing, right? We should all be working our budget according to the calendar. And hopefully the budget committee, if I'm saying that correctly, is always keeping the high level of how do we want to organize ourselves? What's the timeline of information that we want to get, receive, and talk about, so we can be clear with the public what our fiscal year looks like for the one that we're in, or the one that we're moving towards, and then what's the 3-year plan for that. They should always be at that highest level. And I think that commission or that committee will only have about a 2 or 3 year run before it becomes, if the routine is set and the outline is set and the structure is set, then that committee should really not exist after about 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I don't think it's mandated to exist in perpetuity.
Yeah.
I do think now that I'm processing your earlier comment, I do think the timeline that you laid out a minute ago, it feels right. I haven't had a chance to think on it too much, but I think it is even more aggressive than the timeline we have mapped for this year. Like,
It's pretty similar.
Yeah, it's very.
It's January. Kind of be ready by January.
Yeah, the goal is,
to be
yeah.
ready by January.
And I do think that was the intent that we had laid out at the beginning of the
Yeah,
year.
we feel as part of the warrant committee.
okay, well then maybe we were just off track from that very quickly. Like we just didn't get actual revenue projections until January.
Yeah.
And you were saying we should have gotten them in October.
Well, we got revenue projections from Nick in like October, November, but what we didn't get was the
Expense.
corresponding
Yeah.
expense conversation that has to happen.
Got it. Yeah.
That's where I think that we were working under a set of assumptions that we were moving along, and that we were getting our budget detail according to the 5.2% increase. And then when we got the need to adjust to that, to what the reality was, we need to know the reality, at least at a high level in September. Are we looking at a cut year? Are we almost there that we can kind of wait to see how that goes? Are we asking every department to do a level service budget and then a little less than level service budget, which is traditional? Some people do that every year. Just give me a level service and then give me 5% below level service just in case. And so you're carrying both those, but you're talking about them all the time in parallel. So when we get to January, where the numbers are harder, the revenue's clearer, and the expenses are clearer, and then the gap is, or hopefully the no gap is clearer, then you're prepared to actually function at that level and you're aware that that might be the case, as opposed to walking along thinking 5.2 and then having to move back to, below 3% and then 3.6. So it's just moving forward together, eyes wide open,
Yeah.
having full conversations with folks.
And if I can I think the piece just experiencing it last year and then going through it this year, just being mindful of like the impact of the operations of just being in the present year and talking about the next year when we're having these conversations and having conversations about positions that are tied to people, it impacts those people pretty deeply. And so it was really difficult last year because of the scope. We were talking about 70 positions, but it continues to be difficult, and it impacts administrators and it impacts teachers. And so I think the more that, we keep on talking about the timeline and the appropriate timing, we're trying to do so, and I don't want to speak for the superintendent, but really the intent in keeping that and doing so is so that we're not impacting the principals and the operations of the building and teaching and learning in the current year, right? Like we just want to make sure that all of that work is happening so that people can focus on the task at hand and making sure that the classrooms are operating and not having to worry about, oh shoot, I don't know if I'm going to have a job next year. And so that's just some of, seeing that last year and then unfortunately seeing a piece of that this year.
Assistant Superintendent Katie Blake has seen a lot in 2 years and in the 18 months of her tenure here.
We just want to, I think, we try to trying to support the process, but also not only the process of next year, but like there's a lot of really good work that happens and it's unfortunate. A lot of people have to worry about like, am I going to have a job next year? And so
There's a lot of private sector like research that shows, I forget the exact numbers, but the magnitude is roughly like for every 10-point decrease in employee engagement, there's like a corresponding X point decrease in profitability, or increase. And you could like, that is absolutely going to be true in a system like Milton. It's not profitability, it's learning or it's performance or productivity or whatever it is. So yeah, I think that risk is very real.
We presented the budget slides that we had done last week. We in part to the whole staff yesterday. We had a full day professional development. We started with everybody in the auditorium. We did an update on the work that Colin and I are doing as our 2-year interim team and what next year will be looking like. And then we said we had to have a budget pause so everybody understood what we were doing and why we were doing it. And I think it was met with appreciation that they understood what was going on and why, and that we were trying to make sure that we were trying to have a sustainable budget, strategic approach to that in order for them to not have to worry about it. They want to do the job, we want space to do the job and do it well. So it's complicated, but I think the more time we have to talk about it, and in the timeline that we just talked about, we would always talk at a high level if we thought the budget might not be, the expenses might be over the revenue. We'd always just talk about that big picture activities. We wouldn't get into people, right? Because we wouldn't want to worry anybody until we actually had to. So in my past experience, it's always like, well, we're about 400 short. What would you do with that? Well, we're not going to, we're working on what we would do with that, but we wouldn't share that until maybe after the holidays, and we would get into if we had to reduce what those positions would be, or if we wanted to add in any year, what they would be and what to do. So there's some strategic tact, for lack of a better term, that we would always use on behalf of the employees that we work with. But that doesn't mean we still need to move the work.
Yeah.
I'm be mindful of time. It's 9:30 almost. Our next scheduled meeting is next Wednesday at normal time. John cannot make that time. Potentially, most likely. Is there a different morning that folks might be able to meet. That I think the primary goal of next week's meeting again would be to try and finalize some slides for the planned warrant committee presentation on the 17th.
And to vote, correct?
And to vote on the fees, for on the fee plan for Milton Community Schools.
I could do something on the morning of the 10th, on Tuesday morning. I don't know if that works for anyone.
I have a JLM that starts at 7 a.m. I can end it at 8. Then I can meet on Tuesday morning, and I can also meet Thursday and Friday.
The only issue with Thursday and Friday is again, I think that works well for the warrant committee.
Yeah.
That doesn't work well for the fee vote. Again, we could go in front of the full school committee and say we just haven't taken a vote.
I can do Tuesday. I will be in my car.
If you do Thursday or Friday.
I could do,
I can't do Thursday or Friday. I'm on a flight Thursday. I leave Thursday morning.
I'm fine doing Tuesday morning and.
Well, but if Katie, if we work together and Katie, if we want to, if this is really going to be about how do we want to frame the existing slides we have with any additional slides with some of the feedback that we're getting from the warrant committee, and you guys want to workshop some of that in this meeting to get ready for that, and then Katie and I can then again meet on Thursday, Friday. I don't have to be here with that because I will work with it prior to it getting to Wednesday and hear the feedback and then work with it on Thursday, Friday. So we don't have to upset it for that. So my footprint or my thoughts will be in it. I don't want to not be involved in it, but I don't want to disrupt the process either. Do you know what I mean?
That makes sense.
If we did, to that point, if we did Tuesday and we kind of workshopped it and voted, well, I'll give two options. We could do that, or we could meet, if you wanted to meet Tuesday. I just think it would be great to have a vote beforehand for the fees before, like, as opposed to going to the full committee. So, whatever, if we wanted to meet Tuesday and vote and workshop it and then share feedback with John and Katie, if that worked for everybody, we could do that. Or we could just meet briefly if you wanted to vote, and then you could, I don't mean to throw in another meeting and meet later in the week, and I could just give my feedback separately.
I think John is proposing that we meet without him on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
On Wednesday. Okay, that works.
just Wednesday, John's not here.
Okay.
And beginning of it and at the end of it.
Yeah. I think that if he's comfortable with that, I think that.
Yeah. I am.
Okay. Gotcha. That works for me.
All right. So we will have that meeting next Wednesday at the normal time.
Great.
Anything else that we should have on that agenda for next week? Then more committee slides and vote on community school fees.
Are we going to be reviewing the proposal for the other fees for the budget as well?
I mean,
We should.
okay.
Yeah.
And that happened without you?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I'll plug myself right into it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you shared out that.
There's a
Yeah.
memo
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
outlines kind
Yeah.
of, there's different options.
Okay.
And how it relates to the budget proposal.
So next week will be FY27 warrant committee presentation, and also FY27 fees discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Folks are able to review those fees, the memo in advance, and send Katie any questions, just as it's gonna be a lot to try and get through. And one meeting is any robust discussion on that in the slides. Seems like that. Okay, anything else? No.
No, I guess I want to say out loud, just because we're recorded here, to reinforce the fact that this is really hard to talk about fees. I mean, we talked about the community school fees going up, and when you say the percentage, it's really intimidating. And when you do it by dollar, it doesn't seem that bad, but it's $1,000 increase for families to have after school care. It'll cost more to take a bus, rent the facilities out to a park and rec department or to travel basketball, which will then be a $20 surcharge to families. It's not It's hard to do that to families that already voted. It's not unnoticed that this is going to be challenging for folks to actually have to navigate as a family on top of everything else that everybody's working through. So, yeah, I'm just not a big fan of fees, but I understand why I'm doing it.
Maybe we should say that. There's nothing else. I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor, roll call vote. Amanda?
Yes.
Nathan?
Yes.
I'm a yes. We're adjourned. Thank you.